Sorry. In architectural history, when an architectural historian refers to antebellum architecture, they are referring to architecture from a very specific period, 1830 to 1861, April the 15th of 1861, if you want to get real specific. Why? Because this is a form of architecture that is attributed to the rise of the Cotton Kingdom. So the era is almost exactly the same as the rise of the Cotton Kingdom, which was 1830 to 1860, really 1863 in that instance, but if we want to say before the war, we're going to say 1861. But here's where I get frustrated. Architectural historians want to classify it solely as a Southern form of architecture, below the Mason-Dixon, because that's where all the money was made off of cotton. But historically, that's not, because we have Northern people getting grotesquely wealthy off of enslaved labor, the product of enslaved labor. So my personal contention is that any home built in the United States from 1830 to 1861 could realistically fall into that antebellum architecture category. But for the purpose of architectural history, heaven help me, I'm tired. This is our graph, right? And it's backward for you. So watch this in a mirror. Is it antebellum? Drop down here. Was it built 1830 to 1861? If the answer is no, then it's not antebellum. If it's not here, it's no, it's not. If it's yes, is it below the Mason-Dixon? If that is yes, then you got an antebellum structure. Pretty easy. Now, if you get online and you look up what is our antebellum architecture, you're going to get so much incorrect information. It's going to be so ugly. I don't know who writes these articles or who fact checks them for magazines and periodicals, but I don't think they're calling an architectural historian, not even one time ever that I didn't find one that was correct. So I don't know. But this right here shows us that Auburn is not considered an antebellum structure. In the purest definition of architectural history, what is antebellum architecture? Because we are way earlier than this. Way earlier than that. It is not our Auburn antebellum home. Okay, now I have a feeling I'm about to make a whole bunch of people mad. It's kind of my thing. Is it Greek Revival? Are you ready for this? This is going to blow your mind, because I don't think that most people have any idea that world events shape architecture in a lot of ways. And especially this way. We have people who see any house with a portico supported by columns, and they look at that and go, that's a Greek Revival house. And often it's not. Absolutely not. Very often what you're looking at is a neoclassical home. A neoclassical home is going to include styles like Georgian, Federal, you've got Palladian details in there. You know, it's not a Greek Revival home, not even a little bit. Auburn. So now I'm going to tell you why. Buckle up, Buttercup. This is a history lesson. Now I could give you a 4-day class on neoclassical architecture, when it started, what its influences were, but that literally is a class unto itself. And we really we want to focus on Greek Revival today and why it is or is not Greek Revival. When neoclassical architecture started, it took its influences from Etruscan architecture and Roman architecture. Why? Because the Europeans had been there. They'd seen it, they'd measured it, they'd appreciated it, they wrote about it, and they started copying it. Guess where they hadn't been? To Greece. Let's find out why. Because of something called the Ottoman Empire. Now, I know a lot of people like to think that white Europeans are the only people who colonized, but that's really quite incorrect. The Ottoman Empire existed from 1299 to 1922, 1923, depending upon which source you consult and when. The Ottoman Empire, from around 1350 to 1450, was huge. I'm going to show you a map of the Ottoman Empire at its height. One moment. my friends, is the largest political power in Europe and Asia for quite some time, the Ottoman Empire. And in the Ottoman Empire, Europeans did not go. So you had no one going on a grand tour to Greece until different parts of the Ottoman Empire were freed from Ottoman rule. And Greece was under Ottoman rule until 1821. So is it Greek revival? Was it built before 1821? Yes? Then it is absolutely not Greek revival, because Europeans had not been to Greece in a millennia to study Greek architecture to then bring it back and measure and draw and create Greek revival architecture. Greek revival is what it says it is. It is the study of Greek architecture revived into European building. I just did a whole frame and it was really good, and then I realized I had not hit the record button. What I said was, but you would say to me, Lane, my home was built in 1798 and I've been told it's Greek revival. This is what happened. Greek revival was a wildly popular architectural style. Let's say it's akin to the modern farmhouse of today, right? Wildly popular. What's been happening today with 1970s ranch style houses? They're all getting turned into modern farmhouses. Same thing happened 150, 175 years ago when Greek revival architecture became all the rage and we had all of these federal colonial style homes. Everybody decided they needed a portico and columns, and they needed it in the Greek style. And so we have a lot of remodeling that's done in the Greek style. So you get kind of a Greek revival update, but that does not mean that you have a purely Greek revival period home. So how does this apply to Auburn and what we're dealing with all of this misinformation on the internet? Is Auburn Greek revival? No, it was built in 1811. Architects had not even gone to Greece to measure yet. It is a federal period home with Palladian design on the exterior, neoclassical Palladian design. Payne's Palladio was used to design the house. It's Palladio on the exterior, Regencia on the interior. So we have basically Georgian Regency on the interior. A lot of the finishes that we're seeing are absolutely carrying through with that hypothesis. Is it a Greek revival home? Absolutely not. Is it an antebellum home? No, it's not an antebellum home either, because it was not built in that 1830 to 1861 period. So these are the things. When people ask me, again, when people say, what's going on at Auburn? And they expect to see scaffolding and paint strippers and floors being refinished. This is what's going on at Auburn. There is so much more to the appropriate interpretation of a structure than the physical grunt labor of restoring the structure. We have 70 years of misinformation that we are having to work through, to clarify, to research so that we have our facts, our interpretation is accurate. We cannot properly restore the structure until we have correctly interpreted its historic period. That's when you get it wrong. So that is what's going on right now. We are trying to back up what's out there and correct and get accurate information out there so we can do an accurate restoration and interpretation of this beautiful property. So that is what's going on at Auburn. Is it antebellum? Is it Greek revival? Now you know. And just as a quick aside, one of the ways that architectural historians can really tell the difference between a neoclassical home and a Greek revival home is the proportion. I talk all the time about proportion and scale and how important it is. The orders of architecture are so important when you're talking about neoclassical architecture. The columns on a neoclassical home and a Greek revival home will actually have different ratios. So you can, once you've looked at enough of these homes, you can look at the columns and the proportion and the ratio and make a pretty definitive diagnosis on what kind of house you're dealing with, and what period the portico was added to a structure, if it's not original, based on those proportions alone. So I have the books from 1738, and if you come to Auburn, you can see them.